From pharaohs to foreign thrones, how Egypt's fall launched a Hamitic diaspora across empires, a story of decline, conquest, and cultural transmission. Egypt's new kingdom soared to dazzling heights. Temples rose along the Nile, cities thrived, and pharaohs commanded armies that reached distant lands. Gold, grain, and knowledge flowed through its heart. Yet beneath this splendor, rivalries simmered. Priests and nobles vied for influence, and Nubian dynasties rose to challenge tradition. The balance of power fractured. Priestly orders amassed wealth, while Pharaoh's authority waned. The throne became a prize in a game of intrigue. Monumental building projects and endless wars drained Egypt's coffers. The people toiled as the state's ambitions grew ever more costly. Then came the drought. Years of failed harvests turned the Nile's gift into hardship. Famine and unrest spread as the land withered. As Egypt weakened, waves of invaders, sea peoples, Libyans, Nubians, pressed its borders. After Ramses III's murder, the old order crumbled, and decline set in. In the 8th century BCE, Kushite rulers Ptah and his son Taharka unified Egypt. Scripture remembers Taharka, Tirhaka, of 2 Kings 19:9 and Isaiah 37:9, standing as a rival presence to Assyria during Hezekiah's crisis, when Judah looked warily toward Egyptian aid. These 25th dynasty pharaohs upheld ancient worship and courted Levantine alliances. Isaiah warned Judah not to trust in Egypt's horses and chariots against Assyria, counsel born of geopolitics and faith in the Holy One of Israel. In 661 BCE, Esarhaddon invaded. Iron ranks seized Memphis and the Delta. Taharka retreated to Nubia. Later his successor Tanta-Ma-Ni briefly reoccupied Thebizid before Assyria's renewed onslaught forced another withdrawal. Assyria installed Eni-Khopers as vassal king, Egypt's first foreign subjugation. Isaiah 20 had sign-signaled Egypt, and Cush led away, a warning to Israel about misplaced trust in empires. In 663 BCE, Ashur-Bani-pal returned and sacked Thebes, temples shattered, nobles deported, and captives taken. This trauma seeded an early Egyptian diaspora across Assyria's cities and workforces. Under Assyrian oversight, new administrators and artisans entered Egypt, while Egyptian priests, scribes, and craftsmen were resettled across Mesopotamia, two worlds entwined by conquest, economy, and belief. Yet a spiritual thread endured. Rituals, learning, and memory persisted along the Nile, ready to flow into later empires and the biblical story that followed. The first great rupture had begun, and so had the diaspora. When Assyria fell, Necho II, son of the vassal king, sought to reclaim Egypt's power, marching north to aid the last Assyrians. But in 605 BCE, at Karkemish, Babylon's Nebuchadnezzar II crushed the Egyptian-Assyrian alliance, ending Egypt's Levantine ambitions. Egypt retreated behind its borders, its last foothold in Asia lost, reduced to a buffer state as Babylonian influence loomed over the Nile. Yet Babylon never conquered Egypt directly. Instead, its dominance in the region reshaped Egypt's geopolitical role, leaving the Nile kingdom independent but increasingly isolated. Waves of refugees, especially Judeans after Jerusalem fell in 586 BCE, sought sanctuary in Egypt, Jeremiah 43, bringing new traditions and stories. Babylonian cosmology, flood myths and temple architecture mingled with Egyptian beliefs, deepening cultural exchange. But Egypt's independence was fragile. New conquerors gathered on the horizon. In 525 BCE, Cambyses II crossed Sinai and crushed Egypt at Pelusium, defeating Psamtik III. The Persian conquest ended native rule and opened the Nile to Achaemenid power. Egypt became an Achaemenid satrapy. Persian great kings assumed Egyptian throne names, offered at temples, and ruled through satraps while taxing estates and monitoring priesthoods. Resistance flared. In the 460s BCE, Ihnaeus II led a major Delta revolt, briefly aided by Athens, before Persian retribution restored imperial control. Egyptian priests, scribes, and artisans were integrated into Persian administration or relocated across the empire, carrying Nile knowledge of calendars, medicine, and irrigation eastward. Memphis and Thebes bore imperial scars, statues toppled, treasuries tapped, but temples continued rites under watchful governors. Amid upheaval, Egyptian artisans and exiles taught crafts, liturgy, and record-keeping from the Nile to Persepolis and Susa. Diasporic communities shared temple science, astral calendars, pharmacology, and sacred texts, informing Persian scholarship and court medicine. Egypt's identity shifted, from sovereign power to revered symbol, its crown worn by others, its wisdom sought by many. Priests, artisans, and scribes preserved Mizraim's memory in diaspora, copying texts and teaching rites beyond the Nile. The first great Persian-era diaspora radiated Egypt's knowledge, art, and faith across imperial roads and ports. From satrapy to legend, Egypt emerged transformed, its sovereignty dimmed, its cultural beacon undimmed, awaiting Alexander's arrival. Its sovereignty lost, but its spirit and knowledge destined to echo through the ages. In the centuries to come, Egypt's story would be written not just in thrones, but in the hearts and minds of those it touched. Native dynasties would rise again, but the age of empires had forever changed the Nile's destiny. The Sate pharaohs in the north made their final stand, but Egypt's fate was now entwined with foreign powers. At Carchemish, Babylon's armies clashed with Egypt. Defeat sealed the end of its imperial ambitions. Egypt retreated, its borders drawn tight, its legacy now a beacon for refugees and seekers from across the ancient world. In bustling ports and workshops, Babylonian, Jewish, and Egyptian cultures mingled. New gods, scripts, and ideas took root. Egypt's independence waned, but its role as a crossroads of civilization only deepened. The legacy of Pa, Taharqa, Necho, and the exiles endures. Egypt, transformed, became a wellspring for the world. Its knowledge, beliefs, and artistry, embraced by conquerors, carried by the displaced, would echo through the ages. The age of invasion was not just a story of loss, but of transformation. Egypt's metamorphosis from empire to legend. Its legacy, carried by exiles and conquerors alike, would shape the world for centuries to come. Egypt's sovereignty faded, but its cultural influence only grew, destined to echo through the corridors of history. The next chapter would see new conquerors, but Egypt's spirit would endure. From the ashes of conquest, the Nile's wisdom continued to flow, east to Persia, south to Nubia, west across the Mediterranean. Egyptian symbols, beliefs, and artistry spread far beyond its borders, woven into the fabric of new empires. These centuries of upheaval sowed the seeds of resilience and diaspora, Egypt's metamorphosis, a legacy for the ages. Its temples taxed, its priests suppressed, but its wisdom undiminished. Even under foreign rule, Egypt's spirit endured, its traditions carried outward by artisans, scribes, and priests. The age of invasion ended, but Egypt's story, of transformation, resilience, and cultural rebirth, was only beginning. Its legacy would echo through the centuries, shaping the world far beyond the Nile. Scribes, artisans, and priests, carrying Egypt's wisdom, became the bridge between ancient glory and new empires. Their traditions, scattered by conquest, would inspire generations across continents, east to Persia, south to Nubia, west across the Mediterranean. Egypt's metamorphosis was complete, its symbols, beliefs, and artistry, now woven into the tapestry of the ancient world. The Age of Invasion, an era of loss, resilience, and transformation, set the stage for Egypt's enduring legend, its artistry, beliefs, and wisdom destined to echo through the ages. These centuries of upheaval sowed the seeds of resilience and diaspora, Egypt's metamorphosis, a legacy for the ages. Egypt, though conquered, became a wellspring of culture, its legacy carried by exiles, embraced by conquerors, and destined to shape civilizations yet to come. Its story, of transformation, survival, and influence, would echo through the corridors of time. Embraced by conquerors, carried by the displaced, Egypt's legacy endures, destined to echo through the ages. In 332 BCE, Alexander entered Egypt, welcomed as a liberator. At Siwa, the oracle hailed him the son of Amun, and he accepted pharaonic titles. On the coast he founded Alexandria, gridded streets, royal quarter, and a deep harbor soon crowned by the lighthouse, seed of a Greek-Egyptian fusion. After Alexander's death, Ptolemy I Soter seized Egypt and founded the Ptolemaic dynasty. The kings ruled as pharaohs, but in Greek, administration, army, and court were Hellenistic, while native Egyptians sustained temples in the fields. In this fusion, Isis and the new god Serap-Is drew crowds, and Alexandria blossomed into a capital of trade and ideas, with the library and museum at its heart. In 31 BCE, at Actium, Cleopatra and Mark Antony fell to Octavian. In 30 BCE, Augustus annexed Egypt as his personal province. Roman prefects, senators barred, ruled from Alexandria, guarding fleets of Nile grain for Rome. Temples to Isis and Serapis spread across the empire, while Fayum-style mummy portraits fused Egyptian rites with Roman art. Alexandria, home to one of the largest Jewish communities, produced the Septuagint, the Hebrew scriptures in Greek, shaping synagogue and church alike. In Roman Alexandria, the library and museum endured, and teachers like Clement and Origen later drew from this well to form early Christian thought. In the deserts beyond the city, a new spiritual movement was born. Coptic Christianity took root, blending ancient Egyptian symbols with Christian theology. Monks like Anthony the Great and Pachomius withdrew to the sands, founding monasteries that became models for the world, places of prayer, scholarship, and resilience. Coptic manuscripts, icons and hymns carried Egypt's spiritual legacy far beyond its borders. Monastic ideals spread to Syria, Palestine, and Europe, inspiring generations of seekers. In the tension between empire and faith, Egypt forged a new identity, its wisdom and resilience echoing through the centuries. In 711, a wave set forth from Egypt and North Africa. Tariq ibn Ziyad led Moors across the sea, carrying centuries of Hamitic wisdom into Iberia. Animated routes traced their journey, bridging continents and eras. Moorish Spain blossomed. Cordoba, Granada, and Seville became radiant centers where Egyptian-descended scholars, architects, and artisans transformed cityscapes with domes, arches, and gardens. In these cities, knowledge flourished. Universities, libraries, and observatories echoed with discoveries. Manuscripts, scientific instruments, and blueprints revealed a fusion of Egyptian, Arab, and European thought. Arabic numerals, preserved classical texts, and innovations in medicine and architecture flowed into Europe. The Moors, heirs to Egypt's legacy, became civilizers, forging bridges of culture and progress. In 395 CE, the Roman Empire divided, and Egypt entered the Eastern Roman-Byzantine orbit. Diocletian's earlier reforms had already tightened control. 15-year induction tax cycles, the Alexandrian mint closed in 296, and governors bound to stricter audits. From Nile fields to Alexandria's naval quays, grain, linen, and textiles sailed to feed Constantinople and fund the imperial machine. Christianity's roots in Egypt reached back to Mark the Evangelist. By the 1st-3rd centuries, communities weathered persecutions and emerged resilient. Alexandria became a theological powerhouse. Origen and Clement laid foundations. Athanasius stood contra mundum in the Arian storm, and Cyril steered fierce Christological debate. Civil unrest fractured the city's fabric, including the fraught expulsion of Jews in 415 CE. Yet scripture, scholarship, and liturgy bound Egypt to the wider church. In the deserts, monasticism blossomed. Anthony embraced the Anchorate's cave. Pachomius formed Cenobitic communities. Their monasteries copied texts, taught, gave alms, and sent missioners. Ascetic ideals traveled outward, to Syria, Palestine, Cappadocia, and Europe, shaping liturgy, mysticism, and Christian devotion far beyond the Nile. Christological tensions defined an age, Athanasius against Arianism, then the Council of Chalcedon in 451, where Chalcedonian and non-Chalcedonian, Coptic Maya site positions diverged. Periodic imperial pressure on the Copts eroded loyalty to Constantinople even as faith deepened. Meanwhile, temples became churches. Priestly hieroglyphic lore faded. Greek-ruled administration as Egypt's Greco-Roman identity turned Byzantine, and Alexandria dimmed beside rising Constantinople, though schools and libraries endured. As borders strained, strategy returned to the fore. In 640, Byzantine forces fell at Heliopolis. In 641, Alexandria surrendered. Near the fortress of Babylon, Fustat rose, marking the passage from imperial cross to the coming crescent. Yet Egypt remained a spiritual epicenter and economic lifeline, its Coptic tongue and church sustaining a distinct people through change. In sum, Byzantine Egypt fed empires and formed souls, grain ships to the Bosporus, scholars to the councils, monks to the deserts. The Coptic Church emerged as Egypt's own Christian nationhood, distinct in language, rite, and memory, carrying desert wisdom across Christendom even as imperial policies frayed local allegiance. Byzantium gave Egypt the cross, but fractured its soul. And yet, from Alexandria's classrooms to monastic scriptoria, Egypt's wisdom endured, preparing the bridge from Greece and Rome toward Islam. Next, as banners change and Fustat ascends, the Nile's spirit will speak in a new tongue, without forgetting the old. As the Byzantine banners fell, Egypt faced a new horizon, Arab envoys, treaties, and armies at its gates. In 641 CE, Ahemmer ibn al-As entered. Alexandria negotiated surrender. Fustat rose as the new capital. Arab armies swept across Egypt's ancient landscape, securing roads, garrisons, and Nile depots. Treaties safeguarded churches and properties. The conquest unfolded with measured terms. At the heart of this transformation rose Fustat, administration, markets, and the commander's mosque. A city of whitewashed homes, workshops, and caravanserais on the Nile's east bank, bustling markets linked Delta grain, Red Sea spices, and Mediterranean trade. Founded beside the fortress of Babylon, Fus-Ta-Ti anchored Rashidun authority in Egypt. Here, in the shadow of Amr ibn al-As's mosque, Arabic governance replaced Greek and Coptic. Copts held dhimmi status, protected communities, paying jizyah, retaining bishops and liturgy. Arabic soon became the language of power, records, and taxation across Egypt, echoing through the courtyards of Fustat, then under Umayyad and Abbasid oversight. Across the delta's fields, Nile levees and canal works continued under new rule. Yet, beneath the rhythm of new prayers, ancient festivals and Coptic rites endured, and the call to prayer rising over the Nile met bells and chants at dawn. Egypt's spirit endured, its scholars, monks, and jurists sharing one landscape. The wisdom of Hellenistic scholars was translated, commented, and taught anew. The ingenuity of pharaonic engineers informed irrigation, mills, and surveying. Found new life as Islamic civilization flourished from Fustat to Damascus. Ancient texts were translated, astronomy, medicine, and mathematics entering Arabic libraries. Egyptian physicians served courts and bimaristans. Astronomers refined tables and prayer time instruments. Mathematicians advanced geometry for land tax assessment, shaping the Golden Age. Thinkers like Ibn Yunus and, later, al-Makrizi chronicled Egypt's past. The Nile's rhythms guided both harvest and faith. Fasts, festivals, and flood taxes. Mosques rose beside the river, carved stucco, Kufic bands, and courtyards. Intricate arches framed study circles and Waqf-funded schools. Towering minarets marked Fayh, Tai, Mid, and later Mam, Luke, skylines. Blending Coptic artistry, stone, wood, and interlace motifs. Greco-Roman crafts survived in columns, spolia, and plans. Arab artistry unified calligraphy, geometry, and arabesque. The city of Cairo blossomed. Mid al-Azhar became a beacon of learning. A crossroads of Africa, Sudan, Nubia, and the Horn, and the Middle East, Hijaz, Syria, and Iraq, where scholars debated creed, law, and philosophy. Merchants traded grain, glass, sugar, and papyrus. And Sufi mystics wandered, preaching mercy and remembrance. Egypt's Afro-Arab identity deepened, Nubian, Berber, and Arab lineages, weaving together Nubian lineages in Aswan and beyond. Berber lineages linked Maghreb caravans and ports. Arab lineages tied Egypt to the Hijaz and Levant. Islam did not erase the memory of Mizraim. It reinterpreted Egypt's legacy in Arabic ink, infusing it into a new, cosmopolitan civilization. Reverence for knowledge and Nile order endured, now expressed in calligraphy, legal canons, and Qibla geometry, and in instruments charting stars and seasons, and Sufi poetry that softened hearts across the caravan routes. From the early mosques of Fustat to the luminous halls of Al-Azhar, Egypt's Islamic rebirth meant continuity, translation, and teaching. The crescent joined the Nile, pilgrims and scholars flowed outward. Egypt's legacy, reshaped but unbroken, reached Al-Andalus, informing Cordoba's arts, science, and medicine. In 1517, Selim I turned toward Cairo, the moment the Mamluk Sultanate met an empire. The Ottoman crescent cast its shadow across Egypt, banners advancing with decisive calm. In 1517, Ottoman banners crowned Cairo, Egypt annexed as an eyalet under the Sultan's law. A new order began, Pasha's seal beside the Nile. Governance settled into form, a Pasha, a Diwan of notables, and janissary garrisons to hold the gates. Yet beneath imperial reach, Egypt's own pulse beat on, markets, guilds and courts in motion. The Mamluks, once sovereign, remained, emirs recast as beys within an Ottoman frame. They navigated new roles, tax farmers, cavalry chiefs, power brokers beside the pasha's divan. Palaces and courtyards still crowned the city, old authority wearing new titles. Slender minarets pierced warm skies, studded with Kufic bands and turquoise tile. Mamluk massing met Ottoman domes, stonework speaking a blended tongue. Cairo thrummed with trade. Textiles, sugar, glass, and books crossing Africa, Arabia, and the sea. Caravans threaded the Hijaz and Red Sea lanes, while ships stitched Egypt to wider Ottoman routes. In Al-Azhar's courtyard, study circles grew, fed by waqf endowments and ink-dark manuscripts. Scholars shaped creed and law, commentaries echoing from Cairo to Damascus, lessons in jurisprudence and grammar, philosophy and logic, old wisdom taught anew. Science echoed beneath vaults, astronomy, medicine, and instruments of time and prayer. Students arrived from every province, drawn by a city of books and voices. Mosques wore intricate tilework and carved stucco like woven light. Their minarets, slender, sure, marked neighborhood and memory. Stones bore witness to centuries of devotion and to innovation beside the mihrab. Despite oversight, Egypt carved a wary autonomy, Nile flood registers guiding taxes and grain fleets. Local pashas held the sultan's warrant, while Mamluk beys reclaimed de facto sway. Two standards in one city, authority balanced, contested, and shared. Sufi brotherhoods flourished, chikr circling under lamplight. Poetry and calligraphy carried mercy and remembrance through the streets. Music wove into daily life, melody as catechism and craft. Networks radiated outward, Cairo to the Balkans, Istanbul in reply. South as well, to Nubia and Sudan along caravan tracks. Scholars and craftsmen carried Egypt's arts and measures abroad, merchants its grain and glass, and saints its gentle doctrine. Their imprint reached Ottoman courts. Custom, tempered by Cairo's school. And distant provinces where Egyptian habits took root. The Nile's wisdom kept flowing, order, calendars, and craft, carried by Afro-Ottoman circuits that bridged seas and tongues. Through change and creeping encroachment, Egypt remained a crucible of learning and spirit. Empire and autonomy danced in tension, seeds of a modern self stirring. The Ottomans claimed the throne, but the Nile kept old loyalties. As the 18th century waned, new powers loomed on Egypt's horizon. In 1798, French troops marched beneath the desert sun, Napoleon's ambitions shadowing the pyramids. Yet behind the clash of muskets and cannon, a different invasion unfolded. Scholars, scientists, notebooks measuring rods began cataloging Egypt's ancient wonders. Among their discoveries, a single black stone unearthed by the Nile's banks, the Rosetta Stone. Its scripts unlocked the silent voices of pharaohs' priests, igniting the birth of Egyptology and a global fascination with Egypt's past. But as France withdrew, another empire advanced. British flags rose over Cairo. The Suez Canal, an artery to the world, became the prize of colonial ambition. Foreign hands plundered tombs museums, whisking treasures to distant capitals. Yet, Egypt's spirit did not yield. In the crowded streets, poets and intellectuals called for awakening. Nationalist protests surged against colonial rule, the cry for sovereignty echoing from Alexandria, Aswan. Afrocentric scholars within Egypt across the diaspora challenged the old narratives. They reclaimed Egypt's African heritage, art, science, faith, connecting it to a broader Black legacy. Their voices wove a tapestry of pride and resistance, inspiring generations to look beyond the colonial gaze. Through centuries of foreign occupation, Egypt's cultural resistance endured. Its people guarded their legacy, reviving ancient symbols, retelling their stories, and forging new identities. The Nile's wisdom, once deciphered by outsiders, returned to nourish the dreams of a nation determined to reclaim its past and shape its future. Across continents and oceans, the legacy of ancient Mizraim lives on in the hearts of millions. Today, the Egyptian diaspora stretches from the bustling neighborhoods of New York, Paris, Sydney, Johannesburg. Within these communities, echoes of the Nile flow through language, cuisine, celebrations. Coptic churches ring with ancient hymns. Egyptian art blends tradition with modern innovation. Egyptian music blends tradition with modern innovation. In universities and online forums, Afrocentric scholars challenge the boundaries of history. They reclaim Egypt's African roots, connecting the wisdom of the pharaohs to Pan-African identity and global Black pride. Digital platforms become new temples, Instagram galleries showcase Nubian jewelry, YouTube channels decode hieroglyphs, Twitter threads spark conversations on heritage and identity. Egypt's influence radiates through global culture and politics. Writers and filmmakers from the diaspora tell new stories, reframing Egypt beyond pyramids and pharaohs. Activists draw inspiration from the spirit of resistance that once echoed in Tahrir Square, linking Egypt's struggles to broader movements for justice and self-determination. As Mizraim's children forge new paths across the world, they weave ancient wisdom into modern life. From Afrocentric fashion to Coptic iconography and digital activism, Egypt's legacy is not frozen in time. It evolves, adapts, and inspires. The story of Egypt is no longer just a chronicle of the past. It is a living global narrative, carried forward by a diaspora determined to reclaim, redefine, and celebrate the enduring spirit of Mizraim.